I inherited a house by the sea and a pile of money from my aunt. I ran to my husband, but behind the door I heard him and his mother calling me a cash cow. At that moment, I knew exactly what I would do with that inheritance. You know how sometimes life just happens to you? Like you're walking through this fog, thinking everything's normal, and then boom, reality slaps you right in the face. That's exactly what happened to me 3 months ago, and honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. My name's Sarah, and up until recently, I thought I had a pretty ordinary life. I'm 32, work as a nurse at Portland General Hospital. You know, the kind of job where you're always tired but somehow still care too much about everyone else. I've been married to Mike for 5 years now. He's 35 and, well, let's just say he's been between opportunities for the past 8 months. That's what his mom Patricia calls it anyway. She's 58 and has opinions about everything, especially me. I never really knew my Aunt Eleanor that well. She lived way up in Maine, in some little coastal town I'd only visited maybe twice as a kid. Eleanor was my dad's sister, one of those mysterious relatives who sends Christmas cards but never really talks to the family. She lived alone in this house right by the ocean, and honestly, I always figured she probably forgot I even existed. Mike and we'd been struggling. Not just the money thing, though that was definitely part of it. When someone's unemployed for 8 months and their mother keeps making little comments about how Sarah's paycheck is keeping everyone afloat, it does something to a marriage. Makes you feel small, like you're not a wife, just a provider or something. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was getting ready for my shift, running late as usual, when this lawyer from Bar Harbor called. Said Aunt Eleanor had passed away and left me something. I figured maybe some old jewelry or family photos, the kind of stuff distant relatives pass down. I had no idea my entire world was about to flip upside down. The drive to Bar Harbor took forever. Like 6 hours of me wondering what the heck I was doing, taking a day off work to meet some lawyer I'd never heard of. Mike thought I was crazy. It's probably just some old china or something, he said, not even looking up from his video game. Patricia just rolled her eyes and muttered something about wild goose chases. But sitting in that lawyer's office, man, I'll never forget it. Mr. Henderson was this older guy with kind eyes, and he had this thick folder sitting on his desk with my name on it. He started talking about Aunt Eleanor's will, and I'm nodding along, expecting to hear about some antique furniture or maybe a few $100s. Then he said the numbers: $750,000 in cash, plus a house worth $1.2 million. I actually asked him to repeat it because I thought I'd misheard. Like, my brain just couldn't process it. Me? Sarah, who clips coupons and buys generic cereal? This had to be some mistake. Your aunt was quite specific, Mr. Henderson explained, sliding some papers across the desk. She said you were the only family member who ever sent her birthday cards. She remembered you asking about her life, her stories about the ocean. She saw something in you, Sarah. I just sat there staring at the paperwork, my hands actually shaking. This was real money, life-changing money. The kind of money that meant Mike could finally start that contracting business he'd been talking about for years. We could pay off our student loans, the credit cards, maybe even buy a decent car that didn't make weird noises when you turned left. The house was apparently right on the water. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, with this huge wraparound porch overlooking the Atlantic. Eleanor had kept it in perfect condition, Mr. Henderson said. Everything was mine, just like that. I kept thinking about Mike's face when I'd tell him. How excited he'd be, how proud. Maybe this was exactly what our marriage needed. A fresh start, no more stress about money, no more of Patricia's comments about me being the only one bringing in income. I could practically see his smile already. The drive back to Portland felt completely different from the morning trip. I kept catching myself grinning in the rearview mirror like some kind of crazy person. My phone was buzzing with texts from Mike asking how it went, but I wanted to tell him in person. This was too big for a phone call. I had this whole scene planned out in my head, you know. I'd walk in with his favorite Thai food from that place on Division Street, the pad Thai he always orders, but we can barely afford anymore. I'd sit him down, maybe pour us some coffee, and just tell him. Watch his face light up when he realized we'd never have to worry about bills again. My mind was racing the entire 6 hours home. We could finally take that honeymoon we never had. Mike always wanted to go to Hawaii. He could quit looking for jobs and actually start his own thing. No more Patricia making those little comments about how some men know how to provide for their wives. God, I was so tired of those digs. I stopped at 3 different places trying to find the exact Thai restaurant. The first 2 were closed, and I was getting anxious because it was already past 7. Mike would be wondering where I was. I finally found an open place and ordered way too much food. Pad Thai, spring rolls, that mango sticky rice Mike loves but says is too expensive. Money didn't matter anymore, right? Driving through our neighborhood with all those bags of food in the passenger seat, I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe years. Our little rental house looked different somehow. Not like the cramped place we'd been stuck in, but like a starting point. A place we were about to leave behind for something so much better. I parked in the driveway and grabbed the food, practically bouncing up the front steps. The kitchen light was on, and I could hear voices inside. Mike and Patricia were probably watching TV, waiting for me to get home. I couldn't wait to see their faces when I told them about Aunt Eleanor's gift, about our future. I was fumbling with my keys, trying not to drop the takeout bags, when I heard Mike's voice through the kitchen door. He was talking to his mom, and something about his tone made me stop and actually listen. I froze right there on the porch, takeout bags in my hands, key halfway to the lock. Mike was talking, but his voice had this tone I'd never heard before, cold and calculating. Through the thin kitchen door, every word came through crystal clear. Look, Mom. Once Sarah gets whatever Eleanor left her, we need to move fast. Mike was saying. She's too trusting, too soft. If there's any real money involved, I can convince her to put it all in joint accounts within a week. Patricia's laugh made my stomach drop. Finally, that plain little wife of yours might actually be useful for something other than paying our bills. My hands started trembling. The plastic bag handles were cutting into my fingers, but I couldn't move. She's basically our cash cow now, Mike continued, and I could hear him pacing around the kitchen. I've been laying the groundwork for months, making her feel guilty about being the only one working, making her think she owes me something. She'll do anything to make me happy. Just don't seem too eager, Patricia warned. Act supportive, maybe a little concerned about managing that much money. Sarah's naive, but she's not completely stupid. They were talking about me like I was some kind of mark, some stranger they were planning to scam. Mike's voice got even colder. Once everything's in joint accounts, we can start moving money around, maybe invest in some of my business ideas. She won't even question it, she trusts me completely. What about divorce? Patricia asked, and my heart stopped beating. Why would I divorce her? Mike laughed, and the sound made me feel sick. She's got a steady job, she's obedient, and now she might have money. I'd be crazy to let that go. Besides, she loves me too much to ever leave. She's got nowhere else to go. The Thai food bags slipped from my hands and hit the porch with a loud thud. Containers split open, pad Thai scattering across the wooden boards. But I barely noticed. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about Mike, about the last 5 years of my life, it was all a lie. I stood there in the mess of spilled food, finally understanding what I really was to them. Not a wife. Not even a person. Just a cash cow, like Mike said. Something to be milked and managed and kept happy enough to keep producing. I backed away from the door like it was on fire, my heart hammering so loud I was sure they'd hear it. The spilled food crunched under my feet as I stumbled to the side of the house, pressing my back against the cold siding. I needed to think. I needed to breathe. I needed to not throw up right there in the flower bed. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely unlock my phone. I sat down right there on the wet grass, not caring about my work scrubs getting dirty. Everything was spinning. 5 years of marriage, and this whole time. This whole time I'd been what? A paycheck with legs? Then, it all started clicking into place, like puzzle pieces I'd been too stupid to see before. Mike's weird comments about my appearance. Sarah's not the prettiest, but she's reliable. The way he'd dismiss my nursing stories but perk up whenever I mentioned overtime pay. How he'd gotten so comfortable with me paying for everything while he figured things out. And Patricia. God, Patricia. All those little digs about how lucky Mike is to have someone so practical. The way she'd pat my shoulder when I'd bring groceries over, like I was some helpful neighbor instead of her son's wife. How she'd always steer conversations toward our finances, asking pointed questions about my salary, my benefits. I remembered last Christmas when Mike gave me that cheap necklace from the pharmacy, still had the price tag on it, $12.99, but he'd spent $200 on new gaming equipment the same week. I'd told myself it was the thought that counted. What a joke. Sitting there in the dark, my whole body was changing. Not physically, but something deeper, like I was shedding skin I didn't even know I'd been wearing. The Sarah who made excuses for Mike, who felt grateful just to be loved, she was dissolving right there on the wet grass. A new Sarah was taking her place, someone who'd been asleep for 5 years and just woke up pissed off. Really, really pissed off. They wanted a cash cow? Fine. But this cow was about to learn how to play a completely different game, and Mike and Patricia had no idea what was coming for them. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just composing myself, practicing in the mirror. My face had to look normal, excited, but not too excited, grateful, but not suspicious. I was about to give the performance of my life, and everything depended on getting it right. When I finally walked through that front door, I made sure to look flustered. Sorry I'm so late. The lawyer meeting took forever, and then I had to find food because I'm starving. I held up new takeout bags, had to go buy more after the porch disaster. Mike jumped up from the couch, and for a split second, I saw something flash in his eyes. Not concern for me being late. Not love. Just calculation. How'd it go, babe? Was it anything important? Patricia appeared in the doorway, trying to look casual, but I could tell she was dying to know. Oh, Sarah, you must be exhausted. All that driving for probably just some old knickknacks. I set the food on the counter and turned around, letting my face show just a hint of confusion. Actually, it was kind of weird. The lawyer said Aunt Eleanor left me some things, but he was being really vague about details. Mike moved closer, his hand finding my shoulder. Before today, I would have thought that was sweet. Now I could practically feel the greed radiating from his touch. What kind of things? Well, I paused, opening containers of food, making them wait. He mentioned some money. And maybe the house? But he said there's more paperwork to go through. Something about tax implications and legal stuff I don't understand. Patricia actually licked her lips. Money? How much money? I shrugged, playing it perfectly casual. He wouldn't say exactly. Something about having to verify everything first, but he did mention it might be significant. The look that passed between Mike and Patricia was like watching two sharks smell blood in the water. Mike's arm tightened around me. That's amazing, honey. You deserve this. After everything you've done for us, I mean, for our family, this is like karma, you know? We should probably look into financial advisors. Patricia chimed in, already taking control. This is exactly the kind of situation where people make terrible mistakes. Good thing you have us to help you figure it out. I nodded along, playing the overwhelmed little wife perfectly. Inside, I was taking notes on every word, every greedy glance, every calculated gesture of fake affection. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. Mike thought I was just overwhelmed by the inheritance news. "Take your time, babe," he said, actually bringing me coffee in bed. Funny how attentive he'd become overnight. "You've got a lot to process." What I actually had was a lot of planning to do. I drove straight to downtown Portland and found a different law firm, Henderson Associates, no relation to the Bar Harbor lawyer. I needed someone local, someone Mike and Patricia would never think to contact. The attorney, Miss Rodriguez, was this sharp woman in her 40s who listened to my story without judgment. "You want to protect assets your husband doesn't know exist yet," she summarized. "Smart. We can set up irrevocable trusts, separate accounts in your name only. Maine inheritance law is very clear. This money is yours alone, as long as we structure it correctly." While she drew up paperwork, I spent the afternoon at the library researching divorce attorneys. Not because I'd decided anything yet, but because I needed to understand my options. The librarian probably thought I was writing a research paper, the way I was taking notes on property division and spousal support. Back home, Mike was practically vibrating with excitement. "So when do you meet with the lawyer again? Did he give you any timeline on when you'll know more details?" I played dumb perfectly. "He said maybe next week. There's something about probate court and verification processes. I honestly don't understand half of what he was saying." Patricia had apparently spent the day researching too, but financial advisors, investment opportunities, even real estate agents. "Sarah, dear, I found this wonderful man who specializes in sudden wealth management. We should set up a meeting as soon as you get clarity on the numbers." Over dinner, they tag-teamed me with advice. Mike suggested we should probably put everything in joint accounts for easier management. Patricia thought we should consider moving somewhere with better investment opportunities. They'd clearly spent the day planning my financial future without me. I nodded and smiled and played along while mentally recording every manipulative word, because Ms. Rodriguez had given me something crucial: a tiny digital recorder, perfectly legal in Oregon as long as one party consents. That would be me. Every conversation from now on was evidence. Every fake gesture of support, every calculated suggestion, every moment they thought they were playing me, I was actually playing them. The hunter had become the hunted, and they had absolutely no idea. 2 weeks later, I had everything I needed. Bank accounts secured, divorce papers drafted, and hours of recorded conversations where Mike and Patricia discussed their plans for managing Sarah's windfall. I'd chosen our 5th wedding anniversary for the big reveal. Seemed fitting somehow. I spent the whole day cooking Mike's favorite dinner: pot roast, mashed potatoes, the works. Patricia had conveniently invited herself over to celebrate with the family. Perfect. I wanted them both there for this. During dinner, I watched them perform their concern for me. Mike kept asking about the legal complications with the inheritance. Patricia worried about me being overwhelmed by such big decisions. They were so focused on the money, they couldn't see how calm I'd become, how different. After dessert, I stood up and cleared my throat. "So, I finally got all the details from the lawyer yesterday." Mike's fork actually clattered against his plate. "And?" I smiled, pulling out the folder I'd prepared. "Aunt Eleanor left me $750,000 in cash, plus a house worth $1.2 million. Everything's cleared probate and it's all officially mine now." The silence that followed was beautiful. Mike's mouth fell open. Patricia's eyes went wide, then immediately calculating. I could practically see dollar signs spinning in their pupils. "Sarah, that's incredible." Mike jumped up, reaching for me. "We're set for life. We can finally." "I heard you that night," I said quietly, and the whole room went dead still. Mike's face went pale. "Heard what?" I pulled out my phone and hit play. His voice filled the kitchen. "She's basically our cash cow now. She's too trusting, too soft." Patricia started to speak, but I held up my hand. The recording continued. Once everything's in joint accounts, we can start moving money around. Sarah, you don't understand, Mike started, but I cut him off. I understand perfectly. I set divorce papers on the table. I also understand that you're about to be my ex-husband, and Patricia, you're about to lose your meal ticket. Because every penny of that inheritance is in accounts you'll never touch. The look of shock on their faces was worth 5 years of manipulation. Finally, they were seeing the real me. You should have seen them scramble. Mike immediately switched to damage control mode. Baby, you're misunderstanding everything. We were just worried about people trying to take advantage of you. Patricia started crying actual tears, claiming they were only trying to protect the family finances. But I was done. So completely done. The papers are already filed, I said, staying perfectly calm while they fell apart. And before you get any ideas about fighting this, everything's recorded. Everything's documented. You wanted to play games with someone you thought was stupid? Congratulations, you played yourselves. Mike tried anger next. Started yelling about how I owed him, how he'd supported me, how I was nothing without him. Patricia jumped in with threats about what people would think, and how I'd never find anyone else. Funny thing was, none of it touched me anymore. It was like watching strangers have a meltdown in someone else's kitchen. I packed one suitcase that night and drove straight to Maine, didn't even look back. The house by the ocean is everything Mr. Henderson said it would be. I wake up every morning to waves crashing outside my bedroom window. I've got my nursing license transferred, found a great job at the local hospital. The people here actually appreciate when you work hard, imagine that. Mike calls sometimes, usually when his unemployment benefits are running low. Patricia left him 3 angry voicemails about how this was all his fault before I blocked her number. Apparently, without my paycheck, they're discovering what real financial pressure feels like. I should probably feel bad about that, but sitting on my wraparound porch with coffee every morning, watching the sunrise over the Atlantic, I mostly just feel free. Like I finally woke up from a really long, really stupid dream. Turns out I wasn't a cash cow after all. I was just a woman who forgot her own worth for a while. Good thing Aunt Eleanor reminded me.